Good afternoon, and welcome to our 55 and Better webinar series. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today for our final Lunchtime Conversations webinar. My name is Lindsay Haynes. I am the event manager with Prairie Mountain Media, and I will be moderating today's session. But before we get started, I did want to go ahead and just share with everybody that our Zoom webinar format gives you the opportunity to submit questions for our speakers at any point in time during their presentation. So whether you're joining today on a computer, a mobile device, or a tablet, all you have to do is go to the bottom of your Zoom screen and you can either submit a question to us in our question and answer box or our chat box as well. Our speakers will present for about 40 minutes in total today, and we'll spend the last 15 to 20 minutes answering any questions that you do end up having for their presentation. So today we do have the pleasure to hear from a couple different speakers from Windsong at NorthRidge. So we have Stacey Flint, Dr. Cameron Camp, and Becky Lipinski. They are speaking on the topic of dementia care from their unique Montessori approach. So with that being said, I will go ahead and turn it over to Stacey to get us started.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm just sharing my screen here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We are happy to, oh, look what I did. I went ahead and told it to start from the beginning and it started from the end. It wasn't my fault. Let's see. Can we see? No?
No.
We're going to start all over. These things are never without a little glitch, and we even tested it out. So let's start this again. I'm not exactly sure why it won't show. Anyone?
Put on the slides before you click start from the beginning.
All right. See, this is when we need Sarah, Cameron. I'm going to go ahead and just, while I'm doing this, I'm going to get started. My name is Stacey Flint. I am the Regional Director of Marketing for Windsong Memory Care Communities in Oregon, Colorado, and Washington. And today we are going to be discussing the Montessori-inspired lifestyle. I have with me Becky Lipinski. She is the Executive Director at our community in Greeley, Colorado. She'll be specifically talking about, how we apply the Montessori-inspired lifestyle concept, method of care in our community in Colorado. And I also have Dr. Cameron Camp here. He is our mentor, and I've worked with him since 2015, before we opened our first community, and I'm very excited to share what he has to say. And on that note, I was able to talk and get it running. Can you see it?
You just needed the magic of your talking. That's all we needed.
Yep, skills. So I'm going to pass it on to Becky. I'm going to let Becky tell you a little bit about herself, and then she will pass it on to Cameron, and we'll get going.
All right. Thank you for having me here today. I have been with Windsong Memory Care for almost 4 years, and I am thrilled to be the executive director at our NorthRidge building here in Colorado. I've gotten to work with Stacey and Cameron for that whole time, and I've learned a lot. So I'm excited to be here and participate in that way. So, Dr. Camp?
Sure. Well, I'm Cameron Camp. I'm based in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, but we do our work around the world. So we do a lot of work in Europe. We've done a lot of work with Dementia Australia, done trainings in Taiwan and Singapore and Canada and other places. But we're very, very happy to be working with Windsong, because They had the first Montessori-inspired lifestyle credentialed community in the world, and it was there in Salem, Oregon. And so we've been working together for quite some time, and it's a real joy and a pleasure to see the ideas that we've been developing at our Center for Applied Research in Dementia and see life breathed into them, see these being used as a way of life, as a culture, and as a way to engage persons in memory care and to give them a very good quality of life. So I'm a psychologist, I'm a tame psychologist. And that means we ask crazy questions like, what do you need? Did it work? How can we help you? And so we've been translating the work of Maria Montessori and the Montessori method into working with older adults with memory impairment, but also with lots of other populations as well. So, like, what is this Montessori-inspired lifestyle? What the heck is it? It is a way of living. It is based on a set of key values. And those values are treating everyone with respect and with dignity and with equality, and also with trust. You have to be able to develop trust. So it's about a way of living. We apply it to working with persons with dementia. But what we find is that when people start actually doing this and living it, it spills over. It goes home with people from work. You begin to look at your family differently, treat them differently. It's a way of living well. And so we want persons with dementia to live well. We want persons without dementia to live well. And so that's basically what it is. How do we translate these values into practice? We have a set of principles and procedures that guide us. And so, for example, we ask, please invite a person to do something. And I'll just give you a quick little example of that. We say, try to get rid of the word can from your vocabulary. Don't say, can you help me? That's a test. Say, would you help me? Would is an invitation. Would is a request between equals. Would changes the nature of the relationship. So simple little things like that can heavily influence the way a person feels. We always think about Maya Angelou, who said, I forget what you say and I'll forget what you do. I'll never forget how you make me feel. And that's especially true for persons with dementia. And so we look at activity as the key element in terms of engaging persons, in terms of giving a good quality of life. And so one of the starting points for our approach, the Montessori method, is a quote from Maria Montessori. She said, everything that you do for me, you take from me. And this changes the whole nature of our responsibility for working with persons with dementia. It changes the nature of the relationship. I love it when I hear Windsong staff tell me, let me tell you what my residents were able to do today without me. And when I hear that, I understand that this approach has been taken in, it's being lived, it's being breathed, that these staff understand these principles, this approach at a very deep level.
Yeah.
And so,
I think for me, Cameron, and it's a lot about opportunity, right? Because when someone's diagnosed, we make a set of assumptions, right? You and I have had this conversation, Becky and I, a lot of times. You assume they can no longer do. And so all of their opportunity, the optimism, the options for them to live their lives are just removed based on the assumptions that the people around them make because of this diagnosis. And we really work in direct opposition of that. It's all about, seeing what they can do, understanding who they are, and creating the opportunity and this segue in the path for these experiences. And really, and in the back of my mind, it's always sort of this constant pursuit of honestly fun. And you know, what can we think of today? Mm-hmm. It's just, and what's really the really special part about it is it's, when I say we, I'm not talking about we meaning these three folks here and our staff. I'm talking about we as far as the people with dementia. So they are involved. You know, we're giving them the option to choose. We're laying out, you know, we're discussing with them, they're having conversations. And, you know, we often think, if for not this disease, so you take this disease away, how would they be living their lives? What would they be doing? And you better bet we can do it. It may not be the same. It may be a little edited. You know, we may have to make up for some of the deficits, but we can still do it. And as a group, we can really do it.
Yeah, it's like, I always ask to anyone who's like listening to this, what do you want from your life?
Yep.
And the answers are pretty straightforward. I want to feel that I'm in control of my life. I want to know the people who live around me. I want them to know me. I want to be on good relationship, good terms with them. Mm-hmm. I want to have purpose in my life. I want to feel like I'm part of a community. I want to look forward to the future. I want to be connected with the outside world. These are human things.
Yep.
And to be able to give that to a person with dementia is a blessing and a gift.
Yep. And we're creating a Montessori home, right, Becky?
Yes, we are. And going back to what Dr. Kemp said about the staff, I think it's also a very unique experience for our staff to get to work in an environment that focuses on quality of life and not care and safety. So many people, at least the care staff that I work directly with, absolutely are challenged and love the opportunity to do these things. So when someone moves in, I'm not just saying, oh, this is how we change them, this is how we transfer them, keep them off the floor. I'm saying, you know, he was a gardener and this is his passion and he prefers, you know, to make his own orange juice and things like that. And we have very committed, very happy staff because they get to engage in providing a quality of life and not just, you know, how many people can you get up by 8 a.m. So it's a very unique thing.
I'll always remember interviewing, chatting with a Windsong staff member who was head of maintenance. And I said, you know, what's your job like? And he says, it's the best job I've ever had. He says, my job, my first thing I do when I come in is I say hello to my friends and they say hello to me, the residents. He says, I take my meals with the residents. They know me, I know them. He says, when I get ready to go out in the neighborhood, I have a checklist of things to do, and I have my group of advisors, guys who come with me. And if we have to change a room to get ready for someone to come in, they help with this.
Yep.
I take guys out once a month to this was, you know, pre-COVID, and it'll happen after COVID. I take guys out once a month to a sports bar, and we drink beer and we talk about sports and women. And they go to see my son's Little League baseball team, and the Little League baseball team comes and visits the guys here. And on the weekends, I miss my friends.
Yep.
That's a different place.
Yeah. And it's funny, everything that you just said, Cameron, if you guys want to look at the screen here, all of those things, everything that you just said is reflected in these elements here. So those are the key elements to really creating a Montessori home. And I want to point out that it says home because sure, we're talking about it from the perspective of a community-based living, but these are concepts that can also be applied for those of you who are in your home. These are things that you can retool or, you know, apply to what you do with your loved one.
Right.
You know, engaging activities, connecting them to the larger world. You know, roles. I mean, you talked about earlier, Becky, the gentleman, and she's going to, you know, tell us a story about a gentleman. We have some photos in the next slide, who has a very clear role in your community. and the impact of having that role. You know, and making the environment personalized like you do in your own home. And really that's the idea, again, is, you know, if they weren't here, what would their home look like? Well, let's go for that, right? That's what we're shooting for, and considering their deficits. So you want to tell us a little bit about Mr. Gary?
Oh, yes. This story just has made our whole year. So the gentleman in the white sweatshirt here in this top picture, his name is Gary. And when you meet Gary, he seems pretty cognizant. He can talk to you. He can, you know, engage. He likes to welcome new members of our community in. He invites them to sit with him at dinner, these kind of things. And for the last winter, for the last like 6 months or so, Gary has not enjoyed the things that he used to enjoy, and COVID really shut down the things that he enjoyed doing. He, you know, would go out and do men's group. He would do things outside, and he just couldn't do them during COVID. So this winter, we really saw a decline in him. We really saw kind of a depression sink in, and he just wasn't himself. We couldn't get him engaged in anything. We couldn't get him excited. And therefore, we started to see a little bit more dementia come through. We saw a little decline in him cognitively. So we sat down with him I guess it was months ago now. It was about 2 months ago. And we said, you know, Gary, you've lived here for a while. What do you want? What would bring this to life for you? And he said, you know, I've been waiting for garden beds. I want, you know, roll up gardening beds that we can grow vegetables in, that we can do this and this. And he had that vision. He was like, people keep telling me that they're going to help me do it, but I can't. And so we decided right then and there that we will do this. And the only thing he couldn't do was actually go into Home Depot and get the wood, but he sat down with 2 other residents that are pictured here. And our chef is actually very handy. So she did this project, and they sat down and they talked about the size of the wood, the type of the soil, the nails, everything. What are they going to plant in it? And they built the garden beds from scratch, as you can see in this bottom picture here. And then they chose what went in each garden box, where they go. And then Gary, every single day, goes out, waters them. It rained fiercely yesterday, and he was right at the door watching everything, telling everybody, oh, we got to cover this, we got to take this inside. And every single day he wakes up with this passion to take care of these things, to instruct others. He's now kind of in charge of all of the gardening. So if another resident is interested or even looks at the gardens, he'll be like, hey, how about you come with me? And he'll hand them the water jug, and he'll say, oh, these are petunias and these are the tomato plants. And he's very engaged in it. And even now that his family can come to visit, his wife came and he was like, we have to water the plants together, and I'm going to show you where the plants are. And it was a very, very big pride thing for him. So in that, we've seen him get right back up to baseline, if not higher. He's doing really well. And because of that, you know, we're not seeing that increase in dementia like we were. And also physically, he was having a lot of pain and not really doing anything. And now he's getting on his knees outside. I had to remind him to use the little pad. He was like, oh no, I don't need it. And he's just, I mean, he's a purposeful, contributing member of our community. And that's what he was missing, is we were engaging him, but not in his way in that moment. We were engaging him as we do the group and as we do COVID safe. And he needed his own purpose. And also now we have some fresh veggies growing. So it's a win-win. But
yeah,
that's been
Excellent.
Our great story for.
So I remember talking to a Windsong staff member who was in charge of the kitchen. And during COVID, one of the things she did was adopt a resident and teach him how to use FaceTime. And she said, you know, it took a few sessions, but he got better with each session. And, you know, by the end, he was able to FaceTime with his wife, and he knew what was going on. And it was a way for them to connect during COVID. And she said, you know, that was like one of the best parts of my job. And she also said, I really feel thankful that I'm allowed to do that and to spend time being connected with residents. And so I was like uber impressed. One, because, she was such a great person, but two, it's a nice example of the fact that persons with dementia can still learn, that they have capacity if we want to look for it, if we know how to use it.
Mm-hmm. And that actually is the same chef that helped me with this project. And I think that's another beautiful thing of this, creating this environment, is we have someone who is she's not the quarterback. You wouldn't expect to put her in first, but all of a sudden
the unusual suspect.
That's what I was trying to come up with.
Yep,
and I was like, where's the Staceyism? What's the thing?
What's
She's
that
the
word?
unusual suspect. And she comes at it absolutely clutch every time. And it's amazing what you can do when you open those doors for staff to engage residents, how that brings purpose to both people's lives. So.
And so, as the slide says, it's about changing the way we think about persons with dementia, about dementia itself. When you start looking at what a person can do, when you ask questions like, what do you want? Mm-hmm. When you look at dementia as a disability rather than a medical disease condition, if we look at it as a disability, then our obligation changes. Our obligation is to enable the person to circumvent their deficits, to create environments, social and physical, that let people be able to still be engaged. We use a term, cognitive ramps. So if a person's in a wheelchair, you create a ramp so that they can independently go into a room. You enlarge the door frames. So cognitive ramps involve ways to let a person circumvent their memory deficits. So they may have a name tag, a resident, with a very large printing of their name. A lot of times people say, why do you have residents wear name tags? And the answer is so that they can call each other by name, and so they can call staff by name. People then say, well, that's not like what you see at home. And the answer is, well, at home, if you have a person in a wheelchair, do you not put in the ramp for them to get in? This is the same. And what's really interesting is that with practice, many times they learn the names, which isn't supposed to happen. It happens. Get over it. And people remember things that they did that they took pride in, which isn't supposed to happen. It happens. Get over it. People look forward to the future if they have something to look forward to. And that makes all the difference in the world. And so
really coming from a place of yes, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Why not?
And so if you're looking at, challenging or what we call responsive behaviors in a person with dementia, the best treatment for that is to give them engaging, meaningful activity. When a person is making the containers for gardening, when a person is preparing snacks for an afternoon social, I know what they're not doing. The reason that a person stands at the door of a memory neighborhood and says, I want to go home, is because the place doesn't feel like a home. And if you want to stop that, it isn't about redirecting them, because that just puts on a Band-Aid and you have to keep doing it. The real fix is to make the place where they live feel like a home. And that involves having choice throughout the day, having a sense of control over your life, being part of a community, being part of communal visions of what you want to do and where you want to go, being able to help other people. I mean, I see residents in memory care who adopt social causes and who say, we want to do something to help those who are less fortunate than we are. And when you see this, you say, hey, we're looking at a community. I remember going into a Windsong and there was a bulletin board with cards on it. So you had name tags in one bulletin board. Another was like, help, community help. And so one tag said, pick up dishes after dinner. Okay. So I went up to the board and I put one of those on. I was going to go help, after dinner. So I picked up some trays and other residents were doing that. And I put a a tray into one of the plastic tubs, and a resident looked at me and said, "We can do this ourselves, you know." And so I backed off, took off the label, and I said, "This is the place where I want to live.
Yeah.
If I have dementia."
I think Becky spoke about it a little bit earlier. It's a culture, right? And I know that's such a word right now, like everybody's using culture and throwing it around. But it's a culture beyond the way we care for the residents. You spoke about the staff, and that's also something that I'll point out that Cameron and his team work with communities on establishing, really managing and interacting with your staff from a Montessori, utilizing the Montessori methods and principles in that as well. And because we ask that it's, everybody buy in, not just our staff, but families, even vendors that come in, offering them, to educate them, because if we're not all doing it, then the people who aren't are really, I hate to say it, but undermining the efforts. And we have to be consistent. It's got to be top down, bottom up, inside out. Like we've all got to be doing it. And it goes back to, again, changing the way that you think. When I met Cameron, I thought I knew because I'd read up and watched a few little videos, and it really was in line with the way I live my life, this whole concept, but I never applied it to, I really thought about it for folks with dementia, even though I'd been working with them for some time. And, seeing the error in my ways, because as you say, Cameron, it's not a dementia thing. It's a
human thing.
They're no different than we are. Their desires are no different. They want control of their lives. They want to make choices. They want independence, and that's why we do cognitive ramps. So they can independently maneuver throughout their community. They can know where they're going. There's wayfinding, there's arrows, labels with pictures, things that resonate. We do take the time to understand, how they receive information. And so, we don't put the pretty signs up that are manufactured, from some organization that does signage for buildings. We have them help us choose what the photos are, what the word.
And if they chose the photos, and if they help with the wording, then they understand it and it makes sense to them. This is like basic stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of places haven't come around to that yet, and that's why it's so important to demonstrate what's possible. And it's like if someone comes to visit, there's often a visitors committee where a resident will help lead a tour of their home, of their community. Residents greet new residents. You heard the story of the guy with the gardening and the containers, and how he would invite other people to take part because it's their community.
Yeah.
They decide where they want to go for outings when things open up again. They decide what they want to do for socials to celebrate because it's their community.
Yep. Becky, you want to tell them what they recently decided that you're going to do in August?
What recently? Oh, yes. Thank you. I'm so excited. I was like, what are we doing in August? We are doing something fun. So we wanted to have an event. We wanted to do some fundraising. There's a dementia group called Dementia Together that we work with a lot, and we wanted to do a fundraiser for them. And so we talked to the residents and asked, they kind of wanted to do a barbecue, and it spiraled into the residents are going to be making sausages. So we got a sausage, thing, where you shove the meat in and it. I don't do that kind of thing. So they're gonna, and they just ordered casing. They've been researching how you have to keep the meat warm and blah blah blah. It's a fabulous thing. So we're going to be selling Windsong's wieners come August, and there will be wiener shirts to go along with it. But the residents are making the wieners from scratch, and they're very excited about it. And it's been quite the process of choosing the machine and choosing what kind of sausage, pork or chicken. We really went back on the kind of sausage. and the casings and everything like that. So 2 of our cooks we're doing pork. I suggested chicken, and that took them a whole day to get over.
So it's going to be on August 27th. It's called the Dog Days of Summer.
Yes.
Right? And in addition to that, we will be having you want to go and talk about the dog?
Yes, we'll be having a dog fashion show parade type thing. So we're going to invite people in the community and our staff and people like that to come bring their dogs. And then the residents will be judging, different qualities. And I'm hoping for best dressed dog. I really want some dogs costumes. And yes, in the back of our little wiener shirts, it's going to say worst party ever.
First, yes.
They wouldn't let me name the whole event that, but I had to sneak it on there somewhere. So they are going to be judging that, and then there's going to be a kids coloring contest with little hot dogs, and the residents will judge that. It's going to be just wiener-tastic. It's going to be great.
And what's really important is that these are ideas that I wouldn't have thought of, that Stacey wouldn't have thought of, that Becky wouldn't have thought of. These are ideas that came from the residents. But they only come from the residents when you ask the residents. One of our mantras is ask the residents, see what they want. And what's interesting is that after they've done this process and had this success, they get more confident.
Yep.
And they start, what are we going to do next?
Yep.
And it becomes more elaborate, and they're looking forward to the future. See, this, I can talk about it. This is what it looks like. Mm-hmm. And what's neat is that each community will come up with their own ideas. Yep. It's not like, all right, this is the wiener month for everybody in all frontier in all the Windsong residences. This is theirs, So
we love frontier too.
Yeah.
We love everybody that does Montessori.
Good on you. Thank you.
The cool thing is that it pays dividends, right? Because these are the things that bring a community together. And going back to the whole, it's a human thing. When you step back and you go, what happens in the summer in any given community? They do festivals. They do, there's runs, there's parades, there's all of these things. So in our little microcosm, in our little community, we want to offer that opportunity to our residents to do that as well. There are not a lot of greater communities out there that are going to say, hey, why don't you have your folks from the dementia care place over there join our committee to plan this? But you know what? They could.
Yes.
They could. But see, it's a matter of getting people to see this, right? To understand that, to see past the limitations, and to see what these folks can bring to the table, and honestly, like, not limiting them, like to Becky said earlier, based on safety. That's not safe. They can't use real knives. Oh man, they can't go volunteer. What if they walk off? We're not planning to the lowest common denominator.
Yes.
Right. We're optimistic and saying, yep, we can leave juice on the counter. Mm-hmm. It's all right. Mm-hmm. They know how to make juice.
Thank you.
Yeah, with a sign which says, please help yourself.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. I would always rather call a family member and say, hey, your mom injured herself, was sticking her hand in the oven to pull the cookies out that she made, rather than saying, sorry, your mom has, wounds on her.
She's been sitting in front of the TV all day.
Yes. Because that's what a lot of people expect is that, oh, here's where they're going to watch TV. And
see, it's about living. And sometimes people say, well, what if the person, was slicing a banana or a carrot and they cut their finger? And the answer is they put a Band-Aid on it, put a glove over that, and get back to work. Yep. Do you know any chef who hasn't cut his or her finger, while preparing food? And so it's about living. And whenever I go into any place, if I want to do a really quick survey to get an idea of what the culture is like, I ask residents 3 questions. What do you do? What do you want? What's it like to live here? So you can imagine what answers I would get at a Windsong community. Yeah. I make, planters. I pass out the newsletter. I help people be able to hear stories if they can't see. What's it like to live here? We're part of a community. What do you want? Okay. I think I'd like to see how to make wieners so that we can have a wiener festival in August. What do you want? I'd like to be able to make these planters that we've been talking about. That's how you know that you're looking at a community and homes embedded within a community. It's pretty straightforward. And I can tell you there are places out there in the world where you get very different answers. So this has got to be the new model. This has got to be the way forward.
And if you're listening in from another community, there'll be some information, or even anybody, be some information at the end of the slideshow, about Dr. Camp, how you can contact him, about, Windsong at NorthRidge and how you can reach out to them. We do offer different educations, and we encourage you to really dive in and do your research. There's a lot of places that are, I guess I've noticed of late, that'll say, oh, we're Montessori. Ask questions. If they say that, educate yourself before you go in and ask questions, because Maria Montessori did not put limitations on who could utilize, and it's wonderful, right? But it's it can be used as a selling point. And so I really think that, go in and tour. You can tour now. You can tour I think pretty much most of the states. I know in our communities you can. Go in and see how you feel, because it's a feeling. Mm-hmm. It's a feeling of life, right? And energy. And, ask those questions and dive, because, it's, again, you don't just want to be sold. You want to see it happen. Mm-hmm. So, exactly. I'm confident that we do that.
Yes, I absolutely agree with the feeling thing. Anytime someone tours, I say, you love it here. I agree. You need to tour some other places and make sure the one that you choose feels good. Because if it feels good to you, that's the primary information your loved one is going to have, is their feeling. So
it's really funny. We people stop in and they tour, and, oh, this is all great. And I love that you guys do this stuff. And I see all these people doing this, but my mom will never do it. Just so you know, she'll never do it. And we all go, okay. And literally that afternoon, we'll be sending them footage, and they're mind blown, right? They can't believe it. And, again, a lot of times it's your approach and empowering them. I was with a lady one time that had moved in one of our communities, and helping her put her things away, tidying up her room, and her sheets and whatnot were folded on her bed. And I said, Linda, would you mind go ahead and making your bed? And she looks at me and she says, can I? And I said, yes. I don't know, can you? And she said, well, I can. Yeah, I know how to do it, but nobody ever lets me. And she'd been in an assisted living, which is a much, typically, they're kind of moving themselves through their day. And she was shocked. And sure enough, she didn't need a second of my help. She made her bed, no problem. She made her bed from that point on. Yep.
It's very easy to teach excess disability.
Oh, yes.
And Maria Montessori said, we do our job best when they do not know we are present. When we enable people to do as much for themselves and for each other as possible, that is a gift. And when someone moves in, a new member of the community, and they're immediately invited, to do things, that's when you see them doing things. When they're invited to, make their bed the way they like it. Do you tuck that sheet in or out? All right. It's a choice, and you give them the choice, and that's what begins to happen. People begin to feel like, this feels like I'm at home.
Yep. Yep. And at the end of the day, like we said, it's a human thing. And, I often, when I'm out in the community, will look around and say, what are people doing? Like what's trending and what's traditional.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the funny thing is that our seniors, like they are very, they're learning all this technology and whatnot. I was in a community this last week, one of our Windsong communities, and I had worn a wig. I brought a bunch of colorful wigs, and one of the residents was out in the lobby. We were all putting wigs on and laughing, and she says, "Oh, hold on, I got to go get my cell phone. We need to take some selfies." I was like,
and the fact that people learn to do that after they move into a memory care neighborhood is what's special.
Who'd have thunk it?
And the expectation that it can be done and that it is possible, and then to say, yeah, of course. Yeah, that's cool. That's what I love. I hear that all the time, Stacey. Will I be allowed to do that?
Yeah.
And when people stop asking that question because they know they will, that's when a person feels like they're at home.
That's the sweet spot.
That's the sweet spot.
Yep. Yeah. It was funny. Apparently she blogs. She's a blogger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, shocked, it's so exciting because then all of a sudden you're like, oh, these are all the things. Would you like to do this? And what do you think about that? And I mean, it's so beautiful, and, I think that we all grow every day from learning from these folks, and watching them learn because, Cameron, you can talk about this. Becky, you can too. Like they can learn, right?
Yeah.
And the belief is they can't.
Yeah, you have to let go of those things. I remember I was in Montpellier in France at a nursing home that had been using this approach for a long time. And we were greeted by a woman a resident with dementia, who read us a poem that she'd written. And it was in beautiful rhyming French. And the last words were something like, "And when I have passed on and I look down from heaven, I will look down at my home here and smile." And we found out she'd learned how to write poetry after she had moved in, that the son of a resident was teaching a writing class. And he kept coming even after his mother had passed away because he was part of the community. And this woman began to write her own poetry. And then she set up her own Facebook page so she could share her poetry with other poets. And all this happened after moving into a Montessori inspired lifestyle community. This is what happens when you shift your expectations.
Yep. Yeah. You elevate it, right? You elevate everything. And I think, Lindsay, are you on? Are there any questions that we should answer? Anybody who's weighed in?
Yeah, absolutely. We can jump into some questions. So I will go ahead and just get started. So Montessori method, right? I personally, knowing that I was going to be joining you guys today, I just had to Google it. I was like, whoa, I've never heard of it, but it seems so interesting. So, Dr. Camp, it started as like a method of learning for children.
Right. Yeah. Maria Montessori was the first woman physician in Italy at the turn of the 20th century, specialized in pediatrics and in rehabilitative medicine. Was doing work in a psychiatric hospital where they had a number of children there, and they were thought to be unteachable. And she began to use rehabilitation techniques as a teaching method. She said the problem is with the environment, not with these children. So she would have them learn by doing. They will learn through their hands, okay? Mm-hmm. And to use visual representations of numbers rather than abstract things. And her unteachable children began to turn in standardized test scores that were above the average of the scores coming in from the regular Italian school system. Later, she was working in the poorest part of Rome, the San Lorenzo district. And there were preschool children running around destroying property left unattended, throwing rocks through windows. So the owners of the tenements said, you're a physician, you work with kids, give them something to calm them down, which is what you physicians often get is a phone call from memory care neighborhoods. But her answer was, I'll help you, but you have to give me a room where I can observe the children and someone I can train to work with them. And so on January the 5th, 1907, over 60 kids from illiterate parents came into that classroom, and she called it the Casa dei Bambini, the children's house, their home. And the children were responsible for its upkeep. And the children were responsible for taking care of each other and for serving each other lunch. And so she began to apply these approaches there. And since then, the Montessori method has spread around the world. So you see Montessori schools in all the continents, in all countries. And again, the idea is to be able to use a person's abilities and to build on those. And so it's an educational system, but like I said, it's also a way of life. She was an advocate for human rights. Mm-hmm. She was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times. And so we also view this as a human rights movement. How can we give control back to persons with dementia? How can we enable them to have those rights again? When I'm in France, I always say, I see these words on your flag, on your buildings: liberté, égalité, fraternité, liberty, equality, fraternity. Why should a citizen lose these because of a diagnosis? Mm-hmm. And so this is also a human rights movement, to be able to empower persons with dementia, to give them back control over their lives. So it's a very different way of thinking, but you know, we have to create the place where we would want to live.
Absolutely. So in your professional opinion, Stacey, Dr. Camp, even Becky, you can jump in as well. It sounds so great, right? It sounds like where I would want my loved ones to be and how I would want them to be taken care of. So why, in your professional opinion, do you think that other, senior homes or care communities don't adapt to a method like this? I mean, is it hard to obtain? Is it hard to, get the certificates or the appropriate, whatever you need, I guess, the appropriate titles or credentials, in order to have something like this, have a community?
They do.
Can I comment?
They're everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
It's hard. It is hard. And I went from a marketing sales type position in Windsong to a operations role. It's hard when you're working one-on-one with the staff, when you're spending this kind of a time and money into something that's not just care. It's very expensive and it's very challenging. So for me, even in the last year that I've transitioned into this role, it's a whole different bucket of worms to make sure that happens, and to spend the extra time training the staff, encouraging them, being there, being the example, and then having the tools and things available for the residents to do this while also following all of the state and regulations and all that kind of crap that we have to do.
Well, I think by hard, I think by hard is it's challenging in the way that because you're countering habits that people have, and it takes dedication. And so if you're going to do this, you need to be prepared for that. It takes hiring people who will oversee it, monitor it, inspire people to do it. Once it gets going, and it's a system, and you've successfully, altered, get people thinking along the same lines, it takes on a life of its own, and it becomes a place where people really want to work. There are communities, and Cameron can talk about all of the communities across there's some really big boys who are doing this right now. It's become a movement. And it really is accessible, but you have to as a company decide to do it.
And when we talk about culture, it's not a word.
No.
It means, as Stacey talked about previously, a top-down commitment, and you also have to have buy-in. It has to be seen as something that's worthwhile. But I'll give you a couple of examples, like at meal times. When residents are helping decide the menu, and when residents help set up and help clean up, it's a different job for staff. It's an easier job for staff. When residents get to choose what they want to eat from among choices and how much they want to eat, it's a better business model. Yeah. You know, I was giving a presentation in Texas, and I mentioned this, and someone said, you know, how can you actually make that work? Is it actually cost effective? And an executive director of a place in Houston who had adopted this approach went to the microphone and said, when we started using a Montessori approach for meals, when we had residents have input on menus, when we enabled them to see in real time what their choices are, and for them to say, I want that and a little bit of that and a lot of that, we dropped our food costs by 40%. And that's because they're not throwing food away that people didn't want, or they had too much. And so I would also say that it's a good business model. I mean, it really is. You see things like waiting lists. You see a reduction in things like staff turnover. But the biggest challenge is getting people to think differently. Yeah. To start with a different set of assumptions in terms of what dementia is and what persons with dementia can do, and what the responsibility of a staff member is who's working in such a community. But once you turn that corner and people see for themselves, it takes on its own life.
Yeah, and then the ripples kind of work out. I mean, on the, you know, the upswing, it's very challenging. It takes time, takes effort. It takes really, I mean, and one of the basic principles of Montessori is, you know, the prepared environment. So that's, the work is done on the front end. And then, but the continuity and the training is extremely important. And it's easy to fall off. And that's the part that's really challenging. So again, when you're speaking with people, you will, if you just look even in your area, Lindsay, you'll see, just search it, you know, in the area. And there's a lot of places that'll like use this word. But again, like I said earlier, you know, look deeper, because it's not easy. When we hire folks, we say you have your job and then you have your other job. And once they embrace it and they hit their stride, then it's the ripples smooth out, and it becomes, it takes on a life of its own, like Cameron said it. And then it becomes easy, but you have to inspect what you expect, right?
And what we tell people is, we'll need you to make a commitment for at least a year. Yeah. You have to, you really have to say, all right, we're going to stick with this thing. But what we also say is, you know, if you're happy with the way things are right now, then keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. Most of the time people aren't. Yeah. Yeah. And then we say, if you keep doing what you're doing now, a year from now, nothing will have changed. Yeah. But if you make a commitment for that year and you just stay with it, a year from now, you'll be seeing miracles, and you actually start seeing them much sooner than that. And it's really true. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard people literally around the world say, it's a miracle. Well, it's just different, because we start with a different set of assumptions.
So Becky, my next, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, my next question, I think I'm going to ask, I think Becky, just because you are at, you know, Windsong facility. So they say, you know, routine is so important for, you know, dementia care, and but also, you know, it's important to make people feel like you've said, you know, they feel that sense of independence. And so how do you and your staff ensure that, you know, everybody gets that routine, but they also get to experiment with the things that they like? You know, are you doing group settings? Is it, you know, do you have the capabilities of one-on-one? What does your, you know, what does that kind of look like at your facility?
So we always try to start with a routine question. Routine is very important. And so what we try to do is first learn the person when they come in. So knowing the person first, we get their life history going. we learn their routines from their caregivers, and we try to emulate that here. So if someone didn't get up till 10 o'clock in the morning and then they ate granola, we want to have that ready. We want to have that kind of baseline ready, so we know the things that are part of their routine. And then now that they're comfortable, now that they have that little routine, that we've set that base layer of, we know what kind of food you like, we know what kind of things matter to you and your schedule, then we can kind of push the bounds of, well, here's this men's group and this is what they're doing. Let's see if you'd be interested in this. And how do we bring something that you like into a new environment? I mean, you're moving into a new home. It takes some adapting, but also partnering people. We spend a lot of time seeing what residents will fit together. And if we can give one resident who's been here a while, kind of that teamwork, I don't know what word, mentorship maybe is what I'm looking for.
Buddy system.
Buddy system. Thank you for having all
They're like the ambassadors. Yeah.
That will give that person that sense of purpose and saying, hey, Gary, you've been here for 2 years. This is Bob. He's brand new. Can you show him around? And usually that peer is going to help a lot. That's going to really engage, usually more so than the staff. The staff are always going to be like, hey, let's try this. Let's go over here, trying new ways. But that peer system really works a lot too. So I would say it starts with the routine and knowing the person, and then being able to challenge them from there.
And our engagement is set up on multiple layers. So you asked about, like, do we have the capability to do one-on-one? As Becky said, we utilize our entire community, because we look at our community as our residents and our staff. Like, you know, we have labels, but we don't necessarily, we just all live together, you know, basically. And so there are times when our residents are the one-on-one support for other folks because they're peers and it's not their job. You know, so that resonates farther with a person. Like, okay, so the staff is required to, but this person wants to, right? Very different. It's kind of like your family. Like, you're my family, so I have to like you, but you're my friend because I chose you, right? So it's kind of like that. And, you know, but there are stations set up so people can also independently like engage and work with their environment. We do group settings. We do groups where residents lead, where families lead. They're also welcome and everything. So our entire engagement it has multiple layers. So it fits with whoever. So we have the capabilities to pivot.
Yeah, I think that's so great. So I'm gonna have, I think, 2 questions that I'm gonna kind of squish into one. I know Dr. Camp mentioned, you know, when it's successful, we get things like wait lists. So is Becky, are you guys currently on a wait list? I mean, is it possible to get into a Montessori type community, or is that something you need to plan for? And then kind of just piggybacking off of that, I know a big question is just cost, right? It sounds amazing, but is it going to cost a pretty penny to get it, kind of thing?
So my answer on the wait list is, with COVID and also with kind of the population, we do have availability. I do have a waiting list of people that are not ready yet. A lot of people come here and know, this is where I want my person to be. This is the model of care that I'm interested in. I put money down. We do have some availability. It's all, for us, it comes from a lot of education through the community and keeping other people in the community and the community as a whole informed, and you know, showing them the proof in the pudding of what is Montessori and this is what we do, and you know, this is what we preach. We do our educations, and Dr. Camp comes and does a speech, and it's also, you know, what do we do on a day-to-day, showing it and having those reviews of people that live here, but also community members that like follow our Facebook and stuff. So we're very involved in the community, and that helps get the word out about what Montessori is and why it's different. And then cost wise, I would say that we are able to stay very competitive, at least in our area, in our community. We're very competitive because this shouldn't be care that only the elite can afford. This should be care.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of my job to cost manage different things, but yes, we're very competitive, and we want to stay so that we can offer this to everyone, and not just
collaborate with Innovage. also.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we do. So we are able to offer some low-income options for our residents as they spend down and some other residents. So
Mhm.
Right now we actually are offering a flat rate special through the end of August. So that is available.
Oh, see, okay, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's attainable. People, it's something that they can actually consider. It's not something they'd have to maybe necessarily at this point in time plan for way in the future or anything. Yeah. I did have one more quick question too that came up as well. And correct me if it's incorrect or anything, that's totally fine. So is Montessori considered, like a treatment for dementia? Do you take community members and dementia cases that also take medications? Are you, does your staff kind of do stuff like that are treating dementia, or is Montessori meant to replace that?
So
anyone, sorry.
Yeah. Cameron, you want to weigh in or you want me to weigh it? Go ahead.
I can tell you that when you're living an engaged life, that what we see in terms of our research is that people in places that start adopting this approach, you see a big drop in the use of psychotropic medications, antidepressants, and anxiety. You see a big drop in the use of sleep aids or hypnotics, because when a person is engaged during the day, surprise, they sleep at night.
Absolutely.
And so what happens is that you can think of this as a non-pharmacologic treatment, but actually all of those things are byproducts or side effects of being able to live well. When any human is living well, you're not going to be taking drugs to try to change your mood. And so that's really what it's all about.
Okay.
Our goal at the end of the day is to reduce the use of psychotropic medications as much as possible. To Cameron's point, it's not to say that folks who live within our community do not take routine medications. We really focus on the PRN, so the as needed, because that's when you'll see someone's acting up or someone's having a behavior, let's give them that med. And so what we're really trying to do is to find alternative methods. So they'll be on a med for a baseline, but to add additional on top of that, that's what we're really trying to avoid, because a lot of these folks do need kind of, antidepressants or things like that to just, help them along. But what we don't want to do is be stacking, right? We would rather, and then routinely trying to reduce those.
Right.
Those routine medications to see, if what we've been doing has been effective in helping to, eliminate some of the issues that they were having, mood issues, behavioral issues, those kinds of things. So we're not saying it's some miracle, like, do Montessori and you'll never have to take a med again in your life. Well, awesome. No aches and pains, no nothing. That's a little pie in the sky, and not trying to sell snake oil.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Stacey, Dr. Camp, Becky. I did want to definitely make sure that we post your contact information and a little bit of our information about Windsong as well. That way our audience and anybody that watches the recording has that availability. We will also be able to post their contact information in the notes section of our recording that'll be on our website. So we'll make sure to get that to anybody that would want to have that. So I just wanted to make sure, to give you some time to show that. But Becky, Dr. Camp, Stacey, thank you so much. I know I learned an immense amount of about the Montessori approach, and it's absolutely something that I would want a loved one to experience and resume the rest of their life with. So we appreciate you. And like I said and mentioned right before we finish out, is we did record today's presentation. So anybody, if you know of anybody that might have wanted to see this, will benefit from seeing this, somewhere you want to share, it will be available on our website, Northern Colorado 55better.com. So
right
awesome.
on. I'm gonna walk us out with with this little video. And
that sounds
thank you,
perfect.
everybody. Thank you, guys. Always big love for my Becky and Cameron. And it was great meeting you, Lindsay. Come by and tour. Go see Becky. She'll show you it in action. There we go.
Joyce, you bring on the rain, so stop sighing. Be happy again, so keep on smiling. 'Cause when you're smiling, this whole world smiles with you. This whole world smiles with you.
Good all night, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.